Hey guys, welcome to my channel. For those of you who are returning, thank you guys so much. And for those of you who are new, welcome. My name is Rachel and I make new videos every week on fashion and school psychology. So thank you guys for tuning in. So for today's video, I originally wanted to do a myths about school psychology video. But to be honest, when I was trying to think of myths about school psych, there's really not much, at least not much that I could think of, and I tried researching different ones. I feel like because a lot of people don't even know about school psych, there's not a lot of myths to begin with. But then I was thinking, okay, there's a lot of myths and misconceptions that people have about special education. And yeah, the main part of my job right now is to, do psychological evaluations, and we come together as a team with all our evals to determine if students need special ed services or not. So I thought I would do this video because I really want to debunk some of the myths that I found. A couple of the myths I'm going to go over too, I wrote down just from what I've seen with parents and my experiences, but a lot of them are myths that are really popular online. So I really want to go through these and debunk a lot of them because some of them are really bad. So yeah, before I keep babbling, let's get started. So the first myth that was really common on a few of the websites I was looking at was that you have to have a diagnosis in order to qualify for special ed services. That is not true. So with special ed and in a lot of the legal writing, it says that you can have either a suspected or a confirmed disability. So you don't actually have to have a diagnosis. You can have suspected ADHD and qualify under the category other health impairment, because there are 13 special ed categories that you can qualify under, depending on what is the potential suspected disability that you have. Even if you have a confirmed disability, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need special ed support. There are a lot of students out there that have anxiety, ADHD, autism, and they are making good educational progress in school. And that's one of the questions that's asked. So if a student has a disability is the first question that we ask. And if they do, we write that down. And then the second question is, are they actually making educational progress? If the student is making progress socially, emotionally, behaviorally, and academically, then they don't qualify for services. Yeah, you do not have to have a diagnosis to qualify for special ed. You can have a diagnosis and still not qualify. So it really just depends on the educational performance piece. The second myth is that kids in special education will be labeled forever. And that is nowhere near the truth. So sometimes that's what I like about how we educationally classify students who need support, because the label does not stick with them for life. It's very different from a diagnosis, because diagnoses are given by therapists or your doctor, and usually those can stay with you for life, at least on paper. But with school, you get an educational disability. So kids don't always qualify for special ed throughout their entire educational path. So you might qualify when you're in second grade, and then every 3 years we reevaluate students through testing or collecting teacher data and teacher input through rating scales. So every 3 years we gather all this data again to see how the student's doing. Sometimes students might not requalify for services, so then their educational disability category is gone once they don't qualify anymore. And even if you do graduate, say you graduate high school, no one is gonna know once you leave, unless you share your special ed documents and files with your college. That is the nice thing. It does not stick with you forever. So the third myth about special education is that kids cannot participate in the same activities as students in the general education. And that's definitely not true. A lot of people, I think, always think that special education is a place, but it's not. It's supports that are helping the student to make educational progress in areas that they might be lacking. So I feel like a lot of people think, well, they can't be doing the same activities because they're way over there. But no, that is not true. Say a student needs more support, they have a learning disability, which is the most common category where a lot of students need support because they have a learning disability in reading, writing, or math. So a student might be like in an inclusion reading class where they have a general ed and a special ed teacher, and it's a mix of gen ed and special ed students. And then they're still able to do anything. They could do extracurriculars. They can go into like an honors math class if math is a strength. So it's really individualized for every student. So there are no specific instances where like you're completely cut off from doing certain things. Going along with the myth I was just talking about is that kids in special education are in a separate classroom all day. And it's interesting because I've seen in some meetings, like parents are really hesitant to qualify their child as having a special education disability because they have said like, well, I don't want them being in a special ed classroom all day. And it's just crazy to think that like, you know, that myth is still so strong. And some parents really don't know that special ed services, again, it's services, it's not a place. So I feel like, you know, back in the day, special ed used to be a place, and it was horrible how they ran things way back when, but it looks so different now. And I feel like just relaying to parents that special ed is just different supports that they receive. It's not like they're stuck in a classroom with the same kids all day, unless they're like super significant with like, you know, an intellectual disability. And even then they still go out for a couple class periods a day. So yeah, I mean, you can have like an inclusion class or what's called like in our district resource level classes in a certain area that like you are struggling in. So you might be in like a lower level math class where you are receiving that special ed support, but then you can also be in like 3 honors classes. So it really just depends on the student's strengths and areas of need and where they need that support. And also for younger kids, because I'm kind of more referencing high school since that's the population I work the most with. Elementary school kids, a lot of times, even if you qualify for special ed, you're still in the general education setting with all your classmates. And a lot of times special educators will come into the classroom and do what's called push-in services. So they will work with like a small group of students in the classroom. Either they'll like pull them separately in the corner of the class and work with them, or they'll just go around the classroom helping those particular students if they need it. Or they'll do pull out services, which are typically less recommended, but a lot of times they need to be done by like OT, speech language pathologists. Like they can't really work with the student in the general ed setting. Sometimes they might be able to, but a lot of times they want to give that one-on-one direct instruction if the student really requires it. A lot of times that's like the only type of pullout where they'll be in a separate location, but they're getting that direct instruction in the area that they need the most support in. So the 5th myth about special education is that it's only for students with severe physical and intellectual disabilities. And again, that is definitely not true. So there are 13 categories. There's, for example, autism, specific learning disability, which is the biggest category, other health impairment, which is common for students with like ADHD. There's emotional for students with anxiety and depression, for example. So there's a whole slew of categories. If it was only for students with severe physical and intellectual disabilities, there would only be like 2 or 3 categories. So yeah, that is definitely not true. So for example, with SLD, which is again, specific learning disability, a lot of times students, when we test them, they'll have like an average to above average IQ, and they'll struggle in a certain academic area. So it's like unexpected lack of achievement. That's one way that you can look at SLD, but there are multiple other ways, like looking at response to intervention, for example. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times if the student has average IQ, but they're struggling in like reading, for example, and their reading scores are significantly below grade level, then they could qualify for a learning disability. There are 13 categories for a reason. It's because each one is so different, and even the students who qualify under each one, they all look so different. I mean, they're not all the same. So the 6th myth about special education is that you do not get a good education if you're in special ed. Again, this is completely not true. Honestly, I almost feel like in some ways, students are actually getting a better education, because when you have special ed, a lot of times you are getting direct instruction, either one-on-one with a specialist, like an OT, PT, or a speech language pathologist, or a psychologist. You might be doing counseling. So you're getting one-on-one instruction potentially. small group instruction with like maybe 2 to 5 other kids, depending on what the area is. Or you might be in a classroom with like 2 teachers, a gen ed and special ed teacher. You might be in a class that has just an overall smaller class size. You're getting more direct instruction. The teacher-student ratio is smaller, so you're getting more one-on-one time with the teacher. I think you're getting just as good of an education and you're getting that extra support that you need. So the 7th myth is that getting a neuropsych evaluation for your child automatically means they get into special education. And that could be further from the truth. So a lot of times we'll get neuropsych evaluations that were done. A lot of times, neuropsychologists will diagnose students, and I've seen a spectrum of reports. I've seen really good neuropsych reports where it's very comprehensive. They do a lot of assessment, like testing, interviews, rating scales. Like I've seen really, really great ones. And then I've seen ones where, it looks like they're just trying to make a case to diagnose. I've seen students in the average range in almost all areas and they still diagnose them. So I can't comprehend some of them. Because of that, we will read the neuropsych. We figure out, okay, what was done in the neuropsych? Is there anything missing that we need to evaluate a little bit further? When was the neuropsych done? Because a lot of times neuropsychologists typically take a while to write a report. Again, it depends where you go, but a lot of times parents will give us a report that's like a year to 2 years old. So because of that, we might want to do some updated school evaluations as well to compare their performance from the neuropsych when that was done to now. So yeah, it doesn't automatically mean that your child's in special education. Again, just because they have a confirmed disability, we need to see if their disability is impacting their ability to make progress in school. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video about the myths of special education that a lot of people have. I hope it was helpful that I was debunking some of these myths. If you guys have any other questions about these myths, please let me know in the comments. If you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up down below. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. I make new videos every week. And until next time, I'll see you guys very soon. Bye!